Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I'm going to be getting into my September wrap-up. I know we're already a little bit into October, actually maybe a bit into October at this point, and I actually don't have that many books to talk about in this video, so it shouldn't be as lengthy as other wrap-ups. I just do not have that much time to read recently, but the stuff that I have been making time to read for have been really good books. So I have 11 books to tell you about, all the books that I read in September. And before we get into the wrap up, I just want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Atlas VPN. So Atlas VPN was developed by cybersecurity experts and IT people in 2019, and their mission was to create a safe and accessible place to engage with the internet. Currently, they have over 6 million users, so it's pretty popular. I was surprised that I hadn't heard of it, and I was also surprised at how great of a deal it is, and I've never heard of it. You can get Atlas VPN for just $183 a month, which is the most affordable VPN that I've ever heard of. Now, if you don't know what a VPN is, basically it just means that you can put your pinned location for where it seems you're accessing the internet from in a different place from where you actually are. So this allows you to access content from all over the world, like different streaming services from different countries. And it also allows you to keep your Google searches private, getting organic search results instead of them trying to give you things based on your location, and track your activity. It also stops ads and malware, and you can protect every single one of your devices. It's completely unlimited. Now, like I said, Atlas VPN is the best VPN deal on the market. It's $183 a month, and you also get 3 months extra, plus there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So I will have Atlas VPN linked down below. Make sure to go and check them out and use my code, save some money, get that $183 a month deal, and get those 3 months extra. You can protect your privacy and take advantage of a VPN for such an affordable price. So if you want to check it out, again, hit that link in my description down below, and don't miss out because this is a limited time deal. Thanks so much to Atlas VPN for sponsoring this wrap up, and now let's get into the books. So as always, we're going to start with my stats. All of these stats are generated from StoryGraph. I always get questions about that. So these are just the generic StoryGraph stats. But we're going to start out with the 11 books that I read for a total of 2,983 pages. Here is the mood breakdown. A lot of dark reads. I usually don't have that big of a piece being dark. It's usually mysterious and tense that are bigger, but I guess she was into the darkness in September. And also read a majority medium-paced books. 6 of the books that I read were medium-paced and the rest were fast. As for page number, 5 of the books that I read were less than 300 pages and 6 were between 300 and 500 pages, none above 500 as is standard for me. I read 1 nonfiction book and the rest were fiction. Here's the genre breakdown. Thrillers and horror are tied at the top, and then of course we have queer stories, short stories, a little bit of sci-fi. I only made 10 reviews even though I read 11 books because I don't like to review and rate nonfiction. I don't like to rate other people's true thoughts and experiences. But across the 10 reviews I did write, I had an average star rating of 4.15, which is pretty damn incredible. I didn't have any 2-star or 1-star reads this month. I did have 1 2.5 star and 1 3-star, but all the rest were above 4 stars with 3 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and 3 5-star books. And this is how I got my reading done throughout the month. As you can see, during the weeks, especially towards the end of the month, I've had 0 time for reading. I've just been working. And when I'm not working, I'm wedding planning. So the only time I was really able to read was on the weekends. It's so funny, you can see a spike for every weekend. So those are all my stats. Now we're going to go through the reviews, starting out with my lowest rated book of the month and working my way up to my highest rated book of the month. 11th. So I guess we will start with my one nonfiction book since it didn't have a rating at all, and that was It Came from the Closet: Queer Reflections on Horror. And this is filled with about, I would say like 30-ish essay reflections by queer people about how horror has affected them. So each one kind of chooses a different lens, whether it's from a specific horror subgenre or a specific horror movie or franchise, and they talk about how that specific brand of horror has affected them as a queer person. My favorite stories in here were, of course, the one about Chucky. I read that one 3 times and I absolutely loved it. And I also love the one about Jennifer's Body, which talked about bisexual representation in horror. I enjoyed the one about blob monsters and society a lot too. I also like the one about Candyman. That one talked about race as well. Nightmare on Elm Street, that one was amazing. Yeah, there were so many good ones in here. If I was going to rate this book, I would give it 5 stars because I have thought about it all throughout the month. It was the first thing that I read, and every other subsequent thing that I picked up, this was on my mind. How these people see horror and talk about horror was on my mind. Every time I watched a horror movie, this information was on my mind. I took multiple horror movie recommendations from this book. I just highly recommend it, especially if you're a queer person who has felt seen by horror for a long time and maybe felt misunderstood in that. I used to be the weird little child who would watch horror movies by myself at midnight, and everyone was like, wow, she's a freak, what's going on? Why isn't she scared? And this book really talks about why that might be, because queer people are often cast as the villain, or we can feel like the villain because we feel like what we're doing is wrong or what we're feeling is wrong and we're just monstrous and ugly. It's easy to identify with horror movie characters. So that's just a little bit of my reflection on the book, but I highly recommend this essay collection. All right, now let's get into the fiction books, starting out with She Started It by Sean Gilbert. And this one was featured in my thriller vlog that I posted this past month. I will link it up above and down below if you missed it. And this was my least favorite one from that video. I give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Right down the middle, because this book was just very average for me. We are following this group of girls who knew each other in high school, and the dynamic of the group was kind of like 3 cutesy popular girls and one that was kind of the one that was picked on. And now the one that was picked on years later as they're growing up, she's getting married to like this super high profile fiance. She has this luscious, amazing life, and she invites the other girls who tormented her to be her bridesmaids and come to her bachelorette party, which is already a little suspicious. And then we find out that there is a murder that takes place. So throughout the book, we're trying to figure out who is murdered, who does the murdering, what exactly happened so many years ago, and how has that shifted to now this girl who was tortured and tormented and bullied wants to invite these girls back into her life. It was filled with drama and scandalous, but honestly, I just didn't feel a strong connection to the characters, so it was kind of hard for me to get into. I kind of felt like an outside observer just watching the action going on, rather than being immersed in it and really caring about it, like I tend to do with some of my favorite domestic thrillers that are drama heavy, not that deep, but still have some kind of connection. I didn't feel that in this book, although it did have a really fun island vacation vibes. I would say this is a great choice if you're looking for a very easy, light vacation book, but if you're looking for something a little bit more intense or having an emotional connection at all, maybe not. Next up, my 3-star book this month was And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin. I read this for my Patreon reading vlog this month, which was reading a bunch of short horror books. And this one was kind of like trippy sci-fi apocalyptic horror. Basically, we are following this guy who's in this institution trying to be cured of this disease. So basically we don't know if he's diseased or cured. There are two different ways of kind of seeing the world, and throughout the course of the book we're trying to figure out which one is the like awakened, enlightened perspective and which one is the insidious disease that basically keeps you as like a sheep to society. And throughout we are seeing our main character make these different relationships and noticing how they impact him and his mental state. And honestly, I enjoyed it for the most part, but I feel like a lot of it just went over my head. It was a little too conceptual. I would have appreciated some type of like heavy-handed, spoon-fed commentary at some point so I could get a little bit better of a grasp on it and not feel like I was working to understand what was going on. I love conceptual commentary, but I need it to be easy, right? I want it to just wash over me instead of me having to grasp at straws to understand the meaning. So other than that, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was weird and trippy. So if you like that kind of horror, you might like this, but it just took a little bit of extra brain power and kind of worked against the emotional connections coming up naturally over the course of the novella. Next up, let's talk about my 4-star rated books. First up, we have another novella from that Patreon vlog, and that is Unboxed by Brianna Morgan. And this is even shorter than a novella. It's actually a play, and I would love to see this staged at some point. It was so interesting to read. I remember being in theater as a kid and having to read through plays to like find scenes to perform for class, and this totally brought me back to that. I had so much fun with it. In this play, we are following a couple, and the man is a paranormal YouTube vlogger guy, and he has this scandal and basically gets canceled all across the internet, but he's trying to hit 1 million subscribers. So in order to try to like gain favor and do this like big stunt that would get him his popularity back, he orders a mystery box from the dark web, and he unboxes it on camera, and then a bunch of creepy things ensue from there. I really loved the twist ending. The characters felt so real, and I just loved seeing them interact, loved feeling the creepy vibes. It was so light and fun and spooky. If you like plays, you like social media commentary, and you like little dark web elements, you would love this one. Next up, we have Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney, another 4-star book. And I actually originally in my thriller vlog rated this 3.5 out of 5 stars. I feel like I was a little harsh on it, especially after participating in a live book discussion for the Midnight Society book club. I will link our live discussion down below. First of all, I had so much fun with Elizabeth and Michaela on that live show. It was awesome. And the more we talked about it, the more depth we uncovered about the story, the more that I enjoyed it, and I thought that it deserved a 4-star. So I did bump up my rating because of that live show. But let me give you a little background on the synopsis of this book before I get into it. So in this book, we are following 4 different perspectives, and it's basically a smattering of mothers and daughters. And we don't know how these people's lives are going to overlap and intersect. All we know is that an old woman and a baby have gone missing at 2 different points in the timeline, and we're trying to figure out who the hell they are, why they went missing, where they are, if they're murdered, and how they're gonna possibly get back to their families. This book has a ton of commentary on feminism, on intergenerational trauma, attachment dynamics, mother-daughter relationships, sister relationships, grandmother-daughter relationships. It is just a lot of thinking about what it's like to be a woman and have various relationships, and I really appreciated that commentary. I also fell in love with so many of the characters. We said this in the live show, but so many of them feel so real in their flaws, and I think that's a really masterful thing that Alice Feeney has done, and she's done in a lot of her books before this as well. The only thing that I think was lacking in this book was the pacing was a bit all over the place, and the plot plotting wasn't as clear as I wanted it to be. I wanted those reveals to be a little bit more seamless, and I would have appreciated more thrills and less mystery. I guess I wanted a little bit more of a high octane, twisty thriller rather than this slowly unfolding mystery. The end was also a little quiet for me. I would have liked a little bit of a punch at the end. But regardless, if you just want to read this for the commentary, I do think it's worth it, and you will still get a shock out of some of those twists. And the last 4-star book I want to talk to you about is Look Closer by David Ellis. This was also featured in my thriller vlog, and this was a chunk, okay? I thought this was gonna take me forever to read, but I actually zoomed through it. I think I read it faster than the other 2 books that I talked about, which is kind of crazy considering the length and the fact that I am not a big book girl. In this book, we are following this guy who is obsessively stalking his ex. We are living in his little Joe Goldberg-esque mind as he hunts her down on Halloween night, and it's assumed that he kills her. But we find out over the course of the book that maybe that's not exactly what happened. Maybe he's not the killer. Maybe she wasn't the victim, because there are a lot more players in the game than we originally thought. It would be really easy to spoil this book, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to talk any more about the plot. Just know that there is a reveal like every other chapter. There is scandal, there is drama, twists, and turns. It is so exciting. Very low emotional stakes, but I was invested in the book. It felt like a Lifetime movie or like a bad reality show that I just could not look away from. It sucked me in and did not let go. However, I did pick up on 2 absolutely glaring plot holes in here that kept me from rating it a 5-star, but the enjoyment was really like 5-star enjoyment. I had a really fun time with this book. Now let's go ahead and get into my 4.5 out of 5 stars. These 2 were just so close to that 5-star feeling, but something about it missed the mark. I'm gonna start out with A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. This is a more literary horror book about a woman who is a serial killer and also a cannibal. She is a food reviewer, what do you call it? A food critic? Yeah, and she knows a lot about food and she eats her victims. There are a lot of graphic body horror descriptions in here, as well as like borderline disgusting descriptions of food. It at times had my mouth watering, and at times I wanted to throw up. This was just a very, very visceral read. It is pretty plotless. We are just kind of hearing about the life and times of this woman and what led to her downfall and eventual capture based on her string of murders. So we're flashing back to when she first started out killing men to now as she is sitting in jail convicted for her crimes. And just kind of learning all about her, her perspectives. I highlighted the hell out of this book. Like, oh my God, I highlighted so many passages in this book. There are so many amazing quotes. The commentary on feminism, again, was just phenomenal. I loved everything this book had to say. If you like a good for her vibe and weird, trippy literary horror, you're going to love this. The only reason why I didn't rate it a 5-star was because there were these tangents, almost like Frederick Bachman-esque tangents that would go on for paragraphs and paragraphs, sometimes pages, that took away from the story. I found myself leaving the world of the story and thinking like, okay, when is this tangent going to end so we can get back into what I actually care about? And that happened a few times, not too much that it was annoying to me, but enough that I noticed I was leaving the world of the book and kind of anticipating the end of a chapter or something like that. So that was the reason that I didn't get the 5-star feeling, but other than that, I literally loved everything about this book. I want some of these quotes tattooed on my body. And the other 4.5-star book that I read in September is actually the sole extreme horror book that I read in the last month, and that is The Resurrectionist by Rath James White. Oh my God, was this book intense. I want this to be a movie so bad. And you know what? It is a movie. It said now a major motion picture. Come back to me. Well, sidebar. As soon as I finished this book, I loved it so much. I was like, I have to watch the movie. I have to. I need to see this as a movie. Tell me why it's blocked in the US. You can't get it anywhere in the US.
So you know how I'm about to watch it? Atlas VPN.
I'm not even kidding. I am not even kidding. I'm gonna use Atlas VPN to watch this movie because I need to see it and I cannot see it being in the US. So I will definitely be letting y'all know what I think of the movie, but the book, oh my God. Oh. This situation that is posed in this book is endlessly fascinating to me and endlessly disturbing. Okay, keep in mind this is extreme horror, so if you have triggers or you really don't like the genre, maybe you shouldn't read it. Me, as a persistent lover of the genre, I was totally fine with it, but you know, do your due diligence as you always should before going into a horror book. This book basically follows this kid who figures out that he has the power of resurrection. He can kill someone or basically do anything to anyone and then immediately undo it and heal them. And they have very limited memory of what pain was caused to them. So he is a total sociopath, psycho, crazy man. And he goes through his life hurting women, but he constantly gets away with it because the women that he hurts, rapes, murders, all that jazz, yeah, he just like puts them back together again and walks out of the house. So they wake up in this blood-soaked bed in the morning and they're like,
what the hell? Did I just have the biggest period of my life?
When actually they're being terrorized and this trauma is living in their mind somewhere, but they cannot remember it. And every time they go to the police does not believe them because they don't have any signs or marks on their body or any memory of the event. It's honestly very true to life, to what it feels like to be a woman in a situation, even when you do have evidence and the people in power, especially men, just refuse to see your experience and the trauma that you've been through, especially if it's invisible. If it's just emotional torment, it feels so frustrating, like the main character of this book feels, because we follow him up to the point where he moves in next door to this couple and he gets fixated and obsessed with the wife and he starts terrorizing her every night. But she is not like any of his previous victims. She is going to catch this mofo. She's one of the most interesting and fun, dynamic female characters that I've read from in an extreme horror book. There are pieces of misogyny in the book throughout that, you know, I feel can definitely be improved upon, but this is by far and away not the worst writing of a female character that I have seen in a book. Of course, I think all male authors should do their due diligence and continue to improve, so I hope Rath James White does that. But I did enjoy the character, aside from a couple of elements that I just didn't think were accurate to the female experience. It is gruesome, it is gritty, it is a gripping mystery. It is so much more than just shock value, but at the same time, it does not skimp on the blood, guts, and gore. Something that is just pure shock value, I can't get involved in, okay? I have no emotional connection to it, so it feels like, why? You know, like, what's the point? This, I got the point, okay? The commentary landed, the mystery was gripping. It almost had like a thriller type pacing, but the actual what was going on in the thriller was to an extreme level, and that I've learned is my favorite type of extreme horror. This felt like Survivor by J.F. Gonzalez or For the Sake of by Judith Sonnet, where it's the plot and commentary that's driving the story, but you're getting those horrifying, depraved moments along the way. I will definitely be picking up more from Rath James White, and hopefully I can find a 5-star from him. This one came so close, if not for those little pieces of misogyny, but I cannot forgive it. I'm sorry. It's still a great book though. And if anyone thinks I'm like a crazy feminazi that tells you to not read books by men or that men shouldn't be writing women, I would like you to just go ahead and play back that review, or maybe ask Rath James White his perspective on that review, because it was a glowing one. So if you do it right, and even if you make just a couple mistakes, you don't get eviscerated by me. Maybe some people should watch and learn. And now, finally, we're going to get into my 5-star books that I read in the month of September, starting out with one of my favorite horror novellas that I've read in a long time. Oh my gosh, I am obsessed with this book. Obsessed. And it has like very little reviews on social media. So I'm gonna need you guys all to read this book, review it. Even if you like it, if you don't, it doesn't matter. I just need more eyes on this book because I cannot believe how good it is and that nobody has read it. Like, how am I the first person that is talking about this book? And it is Disseverment by Z.C. Kroll. So just a little note on the author. Z.C. Kroll was so phenomenal, just sweet, empathetic, understanding, amazing to me during the last couple months when I've been going through the things that I've been going through on the internet. And he said if I read anything by him to completely eviscerate him, he doesn't care. He appreciates negative reviews as he should. And he agreed to stay out of reviewer spaces, which is great as well. He understands that reviews are not for authors, they're for readers. But I'm very happy to say that I don't have to eviscerate Z.C. Kroll, and I totally would have, even though he's a very sweet man. Fortunately, his book is phenomenal. I'm gonna try to explain this the best I can without giving any spoilers, because once you figure out exactly what's going on in this novella, oh my god, I'm sick to my stomach.
I'm literally sick to my stomach. Think about it. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. I'm not being dramatic. Oh my god, that was not fake.
The body horror in this book is real. But basically, we are following this guy who has been estranged from his family for a long time. He's about to get married and start kind of this new chapter of his life, but his family trauma is still following him. And his sweet fiance encourages him when he gets a letter in the mail from his stepfather that he didn't know existed, like, hey, maybe you should try to rebuild this connection with your family before we get married. I'll support you through it. It's just this really empathetic and beautifully crafted story of family dynamics, family trauma, attachment, and y'all know I love that type of representation. Well, when he reconnects with his family, he gets into... This is not typical mental illness, okay? This is to another level. I'm not gonna give it away, but it's crazy. It's crazy. You have to read it. And this book is so short. I literally read it in a couple hours. It is super fast paced. It is gruesome. It is interesting on a like commentary plotting standpoint and from a character dynamic atmosphere standpoint. And there's gorgeous writing and it's just like, it has fluency. It's easy to read. Everything about this book is 5 stars. Like immediately, I think it was at the 30 or 40% mark when like you really figure out what's going on. I was like, okay, this has gotta be 5 stars. This has gotta be 5 stars. Like, do not let me down. And by the end, all the little twists that hit back to back to back at the end, I was like, oh, this book left me with imagery I will literally never forget. I will not be able to get it out of my mind. The body horror was insane. The writing was phenomenal. Like, I cannot wait to read more from this author, and I cannot wait for y'all to read this book. And I want to hear what you think because it's so good. The other 5-star book that you've probably heard me talk about already if you watched my thriller vlog is Everyone Here is Lying by Sherry Lapina. This is a thriller that follows the disappearance of a little girl, and we know that her dad saw her before she went missing, but he's not telling the police that. So it immediately casts suspicion on him, but really there is a reason to be suspicious of everyone in the neighborhood. And we are going door to door trying to piece together the puzzle of what happened to her and digging into all these red herrings, all these different suspicious neighbors. It has that feel of looking out the window at your neighbors and wondering what all of their secrets are. And yes, everyone's secrets get revealed along the way of this book. It was just pure entertainment. I read it in an afternoon. It was fast. It was easy to read. The twists were interesting. I loved the little piece at the end that I really want to say a trope that's in this book, but it's a little bit of a spoiler, so I won't. It's just so good. This is what I want a domestic thriller reading experience to feel like every single time. Sherry Lapina is very hit or miss for me, but on this, she hit it out of the park. And the last 5-star book that I have to tell you guys about was actually my Pretty Girl book club pick of September, which is so exciting. I love when I end up really loving my book club pick, and it was kind of an unpopular opinion, just a little bit, okay? There was a split, okay? Some people gave this book 1, 2 stars, and some people gave it 4 and 5 stars. There really weren't that many people that were lying in the middle of the spectrum. It was very split, but I'm happy to say that I loved this one, and that is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. We had a really amazing discussion about this book over on Patreon. It was so layered, and we uncovered a lot of different perspectives on representation specifically in this book. So I'm going to go ahead and link that below. You won't be able to watch it unless you're a part of the Patreon. You can join my middle tier, which I think is $5 a month, to get access to that if you really want to watch it. But this book I could literally talk about for hours. We are following this woman who becomes obsessed with another woman, and the woman she's obsessed with hosts a podcast. And I know what you're thinking, oh my god, not another fucking podcast thriller, because that's what I thought. But no. The podcast crashes and burns, and it turns into a Netflix true crime documentary. We see how one woman's trauma and the obsessive thoughts that maybe result from that trauma lead her down a path of vengeance, destruction, vindictiveness, and just overall crazy. It felt like an over-dramatized investigation discovery show. And the moral ambiguity, the morally grayness of it all was so thought-provoking. It kept me engaged the entire time. Lisa Jewell is my queen of character dynamics and relationships. She knows how to build characters that feel like just slight hyperboles of real people and really make you think about yourself, how you relate to others, how you think about others. Just, oh my gosh. It was so entertaining and had so much to say, but it didn't spoon feed it to you. It kind of lets you come to your own conclusions, which I really appreciate. I feel like this novel is really intelligently and cleverly written, and it has funny moments, it has visceral moments, it has heartbreaking moments. You just run the full gamut of emotions while you're reading this book. And at the same time, it feels like a juicy, salacious thriller. Why not have some really interesting, deep conversations while also being taken on this roller coaster ride of entertainment? It's the best of both worlds for me. Highly recommend it, and so happy that my queen's new release is one of my favorites of the year. I always really hope for my favorite authors, you know, Karen Slaughter, Lisa Jewell, Jennifer Hillier, to have their releases end up on my favorites of the year, and yay, Lisa has done it again. I believe this is the 3rd year in a row her new release has ended up on my favorites of the year, so yay for that. And that is it. Those are all of the 11 books that I read throughout the month of September. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and got a couple of good recommendations. Don't forget to go down below, click my link, and check out Atlas VPN. And like this video if you liked it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and go to therapy and read a book this week. All right, I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!